The Joe Rogan Experience.
Now you get through this, right? You write your book and you get in this rowboat journey. Had the rowboat journey been done before?
So the rowboat before, there's a storied history of ocean rowing. So ocean rowing,
Sure, the Polynesians.
Yeah, I mean, it goes way back, but even kind of as a sport, maybe the polar community wants to do this more formally, but there's something called the Ocean Rowing Society that has, the records of different rows going back over time. There's this race across the Atlantic that happens called the Talisker Whiskey Ocean Race across the Atlantic from the Canary Islands to the Caribbean every winter. That happens. So ocean rowing, it's a subculture. It's a small subculture, don't get me wrong, but it happens. Like, it's a thing. There's boats, there's races, there's competitions.
But had anybody gone through that path?
Yeah, so Drake Passage had never been rowed fully and completely before. There was a guy who's a fucking legend as well. I wish he was still alive, because I'd love to sit down more than anything with this guy. His name's Ned Gillette. A true like explorer. He actually got killed in the late 90s, I believe, when he was climbing in the Himalayas or in Pakistan. He got shot by someone who came through the camp. I don't know the whole story. It was a super sad story. But he's done all of these projects. Before social media and stuff like this guy was out there doing these badass things. And he made this boat called the Sea Tomato, and he took it down to Chile to try to kind of do what was like kind of a hybrid row and sail. And so he has a sailing mast on there. He's got oars. He's got 4 guys with him. They try it the first season. They actually can't even launch their boat off of Cape Horn. So they wait a whole other year. And then the second year, they launch the Sea Tomato under sail.
Why do they have to wait a year?
Because the weather, Drake Passage is, we'll get to that, but it is gnarly, bro. Like, it is like, people, as you say, going around the Horn, people say that in sailing, like Cape Horn is known to just be like just treacherous, brutal water as these oceans kind of collide and these huge standing waves come up. So a whole season, they sat down there with their rowboat and didn't even launch it. Then the next year came back, him and 4 guys.
How small is the window where you can make it across?
So basically, the best time of year to do it would be December, January, because that's the southern hemisphere summer. And so the temperature is a little bit warmer. You've got longer days. We purposefully did it over the summer solstice, so December 21st. That'd be June 21st for us in the northern hemisphere, the longest day of the year. We still had night, a few hours of darkness every single night, but we at least had the longer days, because once it gets dark and there's waves coming at you from every single direction, it is fucking scary, man.
Yeah.
Like,
this is it?
This is Drake Passage, obviously as seen from a bigger boat than mine, but
fuck that. Can I see what it was like on your boat? Do you have video?
Yeah, if you pull up my
Insane,
if you pull up my Instagram,
how many people die out there?
So, I don't know the numbers,
like
but a plane crash happened the day we were leaving, and 38 people died in a plane crash in Drake Passage as we were about to depart on our rope. And that's a whole other crazy story. But there's definitely there's shipwrecks out there. There's boats that have gone down. There was a cruise ship, I think, that went down in the 2000s.
In Drake Passage?
In Drake Passage, yeah, a cruise
Jesus
ship.
Christ.
I hope I don't get that story completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure a big boat went down in the last 10 years or so.
What the fuck is a cruise ship doing there?
They go to
Antarctica.
Antarctica.
Wants to see that?
They go to the peninsula of Antarctica. So actually, there's quite a few cruise ships. Yeah, so here's me.
So it's actually fairly calm sometimes.
So some of the times, if you see,
you got some swells, but
you'll see this next part. So this is me in the tiny little cabin. Waves coming over, they're crashing us.
So where's the cabin and where closest to us?
Yeah, closest to us, there's the little cabin that I was in. There was just one of us in there. And this is us putting out something called the sea anchor. That's when the waves got so big, or the wind and swell was against us so much that we couldn't row anymore. And it's like throwing a parachute that basically like kind of tries to hold you in place. You look at those
How does
waves
the sea
coming
anchor
over the
work?
top.
What is it?
So it's like a huge parachute, basically.
It's in the water?
And you put it in the water, and it fills with water, and it holds the boat into place. Not very well. Even in this, if we had the volume up, it's me basically talking about how we're getting pushed back in the wrong direction, but we don't have the strength to row against it anymore. Just getting hammered. But
how far did it push you back?
I think that time it pushed us back like 15 or 20 miles.
Whoa.
But, yeah.
So you lose 15 or 20 miles of progress.
Yeah. And that one, that was the longest sea anchor. I believe we were on it for 26 hours. And so what happens is, like you saw on the boat, there's 3 people rowing, 3 people in the cabins at any given time. And the cabins are tiny. When you're even with the, one person on one side, like I was, 2 on the other side, like you're like smashing there like a sardine. But then when you put the sea anchor out, no one's rowing anymore. And that, open decking, it's like really dangerous to just be sitting out there. So we all try to get in the cabins. But like this Icelandic dude who's the captain, Fionn Paul, I mean, he's like amazing rower, 6'2", broad shoulders, whatever. All of a sudden, the 2 of us are jammed inside of like the smallest little compartment. It's like 2 feet, around 3 feet wide by 3 feet tall. We're like spooning each other. We're wet.
Whoa.
We're cold. We're in there for 26 hours that time. Like,
how did you guys poop?
So if you look, that's me. Yeah, this one shows kind of the wave, the big swell. I'm the one in the back there. And I'm sitting right next to a really fancy toilet, a little something called a 5-gallon bucket.
Oh, that's what you did. You pooped in a bucket.
Pooped in a bucket,
and
not too fancy. Yeah, and then the fish can snack on that. But
Jeez.
you obviously get, not only were we spooning under sea anchor, smashing these little things, and oftentimes those other guys in the other compartment, either three of them were inside the compartment at a time, and one would be sitting out and taking shifts, or they sometimes smash 4 in there. But I mean, they're like literally on top of each other. So we got close, but then also obviously there's no space on the deck, so it's like, hey man, just turn your head away. I'm gonna be pooping basically a foot away from you while you row into this bucket. Like, don't mind me.
Those
like,
mountain houses will create some horrible smells out of your body. I've had those mountain houses while hunting. They're rough, especially for me because I don't eat a lot of carbs. Like, there's just it's all like They taste good though.
They do taste good. Yeah, they
especially
do taste
when you're in the
good.
middle of the ocean. I bet they're delicious.
I loved them. Yeah, they're really good. That and the bars. I was happy with the eating was good, but
when you're halfway out there, was there any point in time where you're like, "What the fuck is wrong with me? Why am I doing this?"
Yes, 100%. So one of the things, like, people have asked me was, solo Antarctica, crossing harder, and the row, whatever, and it's like they're very different. But one of the things that was so brutal about this, Antarctica and the crossing was a lot colder than the Drake Passage row. It was about average temperature when we were out there was probably like in the low 30s, dipped below a few times. But the ocean temperature, like I said, it's 32, 33, just above freezing. There's icebergs in the water when we're getting close to it. And you're just getting splashed the entire time. So from like minute 1, hour 1, leaving Cape Horn, we are soaking wet.
And what kind of equipment are you wearing? Like, what kind of gear are you wearing that keeps you from getting really cold?
So we started out in just this Gore-Tex, this thick like sailing Gore-Tex basically. And that worked pretty well for the first few days. But one of the other cool innovations that Fionn thought of, having done so much ocean rowing, is he was like, dude, the only way this is going to work is if we have some sort of dry suit. It's just too cold. But you start looking at dry suits and you're like, you could never row. You couldn't be functional like wearing like this like crazy dry suit, right? And so he basically says he spends the year, one of the things that he did is he found this like Polish manufacturer, and we all got our bodies measured, 6 different measurements and all this, and basically created these custom dry suits that were a lot thinner than a typical dry suit, but kept us dry, but also allowed us to have the mobility on the oars. And it was really actually built for the sitting position and the leg, the leg press and the arm motion and all of that of rowing. So it was awesome innovation. And we got thank God we had those, because we were getting soaked. I mean, we were getting so soaked out there. And in the 90 minutes, you would think like, oh, in the 90 minutes, quote unquote, rest phase, you would get in there, maybe change clothes or something like that. No, absolutely not. Like we had these suits on, we're soaking wet. We'd get in the cabin. We were all sharing like one sleeping bag. Like I had just one sleeping bag that Fionn and I were alternating. It's soaking wet after the first day.
Yeah.
There's just like, it's basically like, if I showed you what it looked like on the last day, you'd be like, I wouldn't sit in there for 1 minute, let alone like try to sleep. And there's like no pillow. There's like water, like brown water on the bottom. Like, and you're just like, it's the smells from us living in and out of there for this. I mean, it was grimy and wet and cold, but these suits suited us pretty well. The one thing that was great, obviously we were clipped in for safety. So we were clipped into basically these ropes that you saw on the edge there. So if we were going to get knocked off the boat, hopefully we would, be able to clipped in, or the boat itself actually fully self-right. So if it rolls over, it hypothetically rolls back over the top. We had some close calls, but we never fully rolled it, thank God, but we did test that. But one of the things about the suits is basically have like neoprene booties. It's all like one piece, like you would have in a dry suit, which was awesome for keeping us safe and dry. But I didn't take the suit off for the last 6 or 7 days at all. And so when I finally took the suit off, my feet, like you think about your fingers getting like pruny, maybe like, in a swimming pool for a couple hours or hot tub or something like that. Like imagine 7 days of wet and cold and sweat and like all the things. Like when I took the suit off, like I almost threw up on the ground because it was just like gnarly festering skin, and like skin was ripping off of my feet. Like it was nasty.
How long did it take you to recover from that?
I don't know exactly. It's hard to put the point on like, I'm recovered, but definitely took a few weeks to just kind of get everything back. The stability back in body, mind,
Christ,
all of that. So yeah, it was interesting for sure.